A widget is something that is essentially being displayed on your screen, which sort of looks nice. You can customize it, and what we're gonna do instead of printing is that we're just gonna display that widget, right? So let's go ahead and create one. So I'm gonna cross that out, and what we're gonna do is that we're gonna go to our content folder again, and we're just gonna right click here on the content folder. We can just click new folder. I'm just gonna call this widgets because we want to sort of keep our working space like very organized and very, like easy to work with. And inside this widget folder, what we can do is we can right click and we can go into user interface, and then we can click widget blueprint. If we click that, you're going to see that if we just click user widget, it's going to give us this thing right here. I'm just going to call it you lost underscore widget. So this is going to be a widget which is essentially going to have text which is going to say you lost. So I'm going to be explaining to you how that works and how we're going to do that. Just open it for now. And you're going to see this sort of canvas type of thing will appear on your screen. Now, if you know anything about like Photoshop or anything about like Illustrator or any other photo editing software, this is very, very similar to that. You have a bunch of these assets which you can use, and this is sort of like the viewport that you can sort of add text to. You can add images to it, you can add buttons to it, and you can make those buttons do different things. So this is a very powerful tool which you can use in your games, and you can even have animations in this as well. But we're going to be covering a whole bunch of things in just a bit. For now, I'm just going to give you a general introduction to how widgets work, right? So essentially our main goal is to have a text, right? So we can see this text thing right here, right? But before you start working on this, you want to have a canvas. You're always gonna go to your palette and search for canvas panel, and just drag this on your screen like that. That's just gonna make sure that everything you add to this is gonna be displayed, and this is something that you have to do every single time. Once you're done with this, then you can drag text onto your screen basically, and then you can just select the text and change the text to whatever you want. I'm just gonna set it to you lost. Okay. You can see that this text is right here. And now you're going to notice that on the right side in the details panel, you have a whole bunch of settings which you can use to sort of adjust your, basically your text, right? You can, first of all, what you can do is you can go to your font. You can change your font to whatever you want. You can change the font size. You can basically just do a whole bunch of different things that you want to do, right? One thing I want to do is that I want to make sure that my size to content is checked, and also my anchor. This is where you want your sort of thing to be. I want to make sure that it's set to the center because you want it to be in the center. And another thing that I want to do is that obviously this font is pretty basic, it's pretty generic. So I want to make sure that the font looks good, right? So what I'll do for that is that I'll basically import a custom font inside of Unreal Engine 5. And I'm going to show you exactly the way you can do that. It works slightly differently than other softwares. So other softwares, it would just give you all the fonts that you have available right here. But in Unreal Engine 5, you have to sort of manually import fonts, which is just a slight bit of a hassle, but it's still fine. So what you can do is you can just go to the internet and just go to dafont.com, like this, dafont.com. And you can essentially just select any font that you want. All these fonts are free. So what I'm personally going to do is I'm just going to go to sans serif. And I can just select any one of these. Honestly, all of them look pretty nice. You can even put your custom text in this as well. So I'm just going to put you lost, just to see which one would look the best. I think this font right here, Akira Expanded, this one looks pretty nice. So once you have selected a font, you can just download it like this and basically just open it. And instead of installing it, what you can do is you can just copy it and go to desktop or wherever you want to save it and just like save it there. After that, you can basically just in your content browser, what you want to do is you want to just drag that in. So this file right here, this font file, I'm just going to drag that in to Unreal Engine like this, and it just say yes to this. And now you're going to see that we have this font installed in Unreal Engine 5. So now if you go back to the widget, and now if I go to font family, you're going to see Akira Expanded is right here. And now I can just apply that font like that, and you're going to see that it's going to be applied. Perfect. So I think it looks pretty nice. You also have a whole bunch of different settings that you can sort of enable for this text. One of them is going to be a shadow that we're going to add to this. So the shadow color, you can see that the alpha transparency is set to 0. So if I set that to something like 0.8, you're going to see that there's going to be a slight bit of a shadow, or we can like just change the color, something like this. And also the shadow offset, we can change this to make it look better. Something like that would look nice. And also maybe just make it a little less prominent. And I think that would look pretty nice. So we have this. And now what we can do is we can just compile this. And for now, I think this should be good enough. We can obviously add images and all that stuff later on. But I think for now, it should be good enough. So we can just cross it out. And now we have this widget ready to be displayed on our screen. So what you want to do is you want to go back to blueprints. You want to go back to your game mode. And here, basically, what you want to do is that instead of printing a string, what you want to do is you want to go drag out of this. And you're going to say create widget. And you're just going to click this right here, hit widget. And now in the class, you're going to basically select the widget that you want to add. So if you go all the way down, you're going to see you lost widget. This is the one that we just created. So once you create it, it's still not going to be displayed to your screen. You're going to have to drag out of this again, and you're going to have to say add to viewport. If you just say add to viewport and also take the return value and plug it into the target. If you compile this, now after 3 seconds exactly, you're going to see you lost on your screen, which I think looks pretty nice. At least we have a good font and everything. Now, obviously, you can still control your player and everything still works just as normal, but you know, you still have this you lost thing right here. Next up, what we're going to do is that we created a functionality for you lost. Now we're going to create a functionality for you won as well. So what we want to do for that is that we are basically going to go to the place where, you know, we want the game to end. And then there we're gonna right click in the blueprints folder and create a blueprint class, and we're gonna be creating an actor this time. So I'm just gonna call this finish line BP. BP stands for blueprint. Usually the naming convention is just adding BP at the end of the name of things that are blueprints. That way you just know, you know, that what you're working with is a blueprint. So if I open that, you're going to see that we have this thing, this whole viewport inside a blueprint. Now you must be confused. Before we had an event graph, now we have a whole viewport inside the blueprint. So blueprint actors basically have a viewport as well. The game mode does not have a viewport because the game mode doesn't need a viewport. But in this one, you also have an event graph, basically the same as before. You have event begin play, which runs when the game is started. You have event tick, which runs every frame. But you also have this thing called event actor begin overlap. I'm going to talk about this in just a bit, but for now we're just going to ignore the event graph. In the viewport, however, you have basically the actual visual component of that blueprint. So if I place this blueprint in the game, what exactly are you going to see, right? So that's essentially going to be right here. And what you can do is you can basically just add a static mesh. What a static mesh is that basically it's anything that can be seen in the world. So if I just do static mesh, and here you're going to see that we have a static mesh component. I can just select anything. I can literally even select any of these rocks or anything like that. It's still going to work. But you also have, if I just click this drop down button, you have a bunch of these things which you can select. These are all the assets essentially that are available inside our game. So just for the sake of a demonstration, I'm just going to be adding an Unreal Engine logo right here, just so you guys can like sort of see. And also the movement controls inside a blueprint viewport are the same as normal. So you can see that we have an Unreal Engine logo right here. So now if I just compile this, and if I just drag this right here, you can see that we have this blueprint in our viewport, and we can just look at it like we normally would, right? So I'm just going to place it right here, something like that. I'm going to angle it a little bit and maybe even move it up slightly. So this essentially just symbolizes our finish line, for now at least. We're gonna go back here, and you're gonna see that we don't really have a collision in this right now. So what we're gonna do next is that we're gonna add, basically, I'm gonna search for collision, and we're gonna add a box collision to this. I'm just gonna call it box for now. It's fine. You can see that we have this box right here. I'm gonna scale it up quite a bit. So I'm gonna make it bigger. My bad, bigger than the actual Unreal Engine logo. And maybe even bigger in this axis as well, and in this axis as well, something like that. So now what happens is that we want to basically run, we want to sort of just make the character win the game as soon as the player sort of essentially enters this box. That's our goal with this. So I'm just going to compile this, and now you can see that even in our viewport we have the box outlined like that. And I'm just going to rotate this slightly, something like that, and just place it right here, so that just to make sure that the player actually does intersect with it. Now if I go ahead and play the game, you're gonna see that if I run, we did get the U loss, but that doesn't matter. We don't really care for now. But you can see that we can essentially just collide with this box, and we can, it's not really a real collision. We're not really, unable to like go inside the box. We can go inside it, but it's gonna call an event as soon as we collide with the box. As soon as we enter the box, it's gonna basically start an event, which is gonna display a widget on the screen, which is gonna say you won, because essentially we reached the finish line. If that didn't make sense, it's perfectly fine. I'm gonna explain to you just in just a second what we're doing. So just select the box, and with the box selected, we're going to go to the details panel. We're going to go all the way down to events, and you're going to see that we have a whole bunch of events that we can basically use to sort of do different things with this box, right? So the one that we're interested in is on component begin overlap. If I just click the plus icon right here, it's going to create this event right here, and it's going to take me to the event graph. And this event will basically run whenever any character, in our case, our main character, the one we're controlling, is gonna overlap with this box. What's gonna happen? We can just like, for now, we can just do print. We can just do print string for now. And we can call this box overlapped. Okay. And if we compile it and go back, and if I just go all the way back to, and jump over this, if I go all the way to this, you can see that on our top left corner of our screen, you can see box overlapped. Now, if I go out of this again, and if I come back, it should still work again. You can see it works again. So this is basically how you're going to win the game, essentially. So if I go ahead and if I remove this, what you really want to do is that you want to basically run the U1 event. Now, this is going to be slightly complex for some of you guys, but it's going to be perfectly fine. You're going to understand this eventually. So right now I'm going to go back to my game mode. Here we have this event called timer ended. I'm going to select this and I'm going to rename this. So the name, I'm going to change this to you lost, because this is really what it's doing, right? It's invalidating the timer, and then it's also basically just displaying the you lost widget, right? What we want to do is we want to create another event. So I'm going to click add custom event again. This event I'm going to call U1, and I'm just going to place this right here. And again, we can just copy these two nodes exactly as they are, copy them, Control C and Control V, paste them right here. And this part is going to be exactly the same, because even if you win or lose, we do want to invalidate the timer regardless. And then we're going to basically create a widget as well. However, this time the widget class is not going to be you lose. It's going to be a different widget, which we're just going to create. So we're going to go back to widgets. We're going to essentially just copy this, or essentially just duplicate this. And instead of this, I'm going to call it, rename. I'm going to call this U1 widget. Open this. And now we can, instead of you lost, we can just do U1. So this is another widget that we just created. We can go back to the game mode, and here we can just say U1 widget, and again, add to viewport as well, just like we normally do. Hopefully all this made sense. So we're having two events. One of them is going to be called when the timer ends, right? This event, you lost event. The other event is going to be called by something else, and that is basically when our character overlaps with this whole box, this finish line box. So the other event is going to be essentially called by that. So what we can do is that we can go back to our finish line, and what we want to do from here is that we want to basically call the U1 event. But if I search for U1, you're going to see that we're not really seeing the U1 event right here. The reason for that is because content sensitive is turned on. If I just turn this off, you're going to see that U1 is going to be right here. Perfect. But now if I go ahead and compile this, you're going to see that we're going to get an error, because the target is basically the blueprint which has this event itself. And it's not this blueprint for sure, because this blueprint doesn't have that event. The target is going to be essentially the game mode blueprint, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to search for game mode underscore tutorial, basically the name of this game mode. And then you're going to see this node called cast to game mode underscore tutorial. Now, casting is a whole nother thing. Casting is pretty complex, honestly, I would say, for beginners at least. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just the only thing that you need to know is that if you want to, let's say, access any functions which are inside, or any events rather, which are inside another blueprint, if I want to access any functions which are inside this blueprint, I want to access those inside this, I'm going to have to create a node which is going to cast this blueprint to the other one inside which we have events. I hope that made sense. Even if that didn't, it's perfectly fine. You're going to learn that eventually. But yeah, so that's that. And again, I'm going to connect this to this and then this to this like that. And something like that. That should work. In the object, just know one thing that we're just going to do get game mode. Just write get game mode and just do this. You don't need to understand what exactly this does. This part, I'm not really going to get into too much detail because I know this is pretty confusing for beginners. For now, I would say just like copy as it is. Eventually, hopefully, as you keep on learning, you're going to understand why exactly these are used. But for now, I just don't want to confuse you with all the explanations and all that stuff. So just for now, just copy it as it is. But if everything we did was right, it would just work perfectly, right? So what we have done so far is that in our viewport, the moment the character is going to overlap with this, my bad, I'm going to go to event graph, it's going to run this event, right? The moment it overlaps, and then it's going to cast to game mode, and it's going to take this U1 event from there. And what is inside the U1 event is going to invalidate the timer first, and then it's going to create the U1 widget, right? But we got to make sure to do this before you lose the game. So I'm going to just set the timer to something like 15 seconds. Just to make sure that we don't lose the game before winning. And now, with everything saved, with everything compiled, we're going to play the game. Let's see if the U1 functionality works. And so you won. Perfect. We won the game. And so you can see that the timer has been invalidated. So we're not going to see you lost anymore because obviously, you know, we have basically ended the timer. So that's perfectly fine. We don't need to worry about the timer being, we don't need to worry about the you lost function being called after, you know, you win. But there is a problem. There's a glitch in the game, and that is if you lose before, 1 second. If I just go near the finish line and I just don't quite go there, you're going to see that if you lose the game before winning, so you lost the game, right? Now if I go inside the U1, inside this, you're going to see that we're going to have U1 on top of U lost. So that's a glitch that we need to fix. So we want to make sure that it's always either you won or you lost. It's not both, obviously, because you can win and lose the game at the same time, right? That's just against common sense. So what we want to do is that we want to use booleans for this. So the way it works is that basically in the you lost event, what we can do is we can create another variable inside this whole game mode, not inside the event. We're going to be using the variable inside the event, but we're going to be creating the variable outside in the global context. We're going to be clicking plus right here. And I'm going to name this lost game question mark. So this is going to be a boolean. I'm just going to let it be a boolean, right? And what this variable is going to contain is that basically is going to contain information about whether the character has lost the game or no. If I compile this, you're going to see that the default value for this is going to be no, because obviously when you start the game, you're not going to be, you know, you're not going to lose automatically. So basically what we want to do is that when you basically win the game, what you want to do is that we want to have an if statement. If you know anything about programming, you would know what if statements are. So we want to have an if statement just to make sure that you already haven't lost the game. If you have lost the game, it's going to do nothing. It's not going to display the U1 widget. However, if you've not lost the game, so if lost game question mark is false, it's at the default value, then it's going to display this widget, right? So if statements inside of Unreal Engine 5 are called branch. So if I just search for branch, you can see this thing right here. And we can just basically add this in the middle of these two nodes. And so this condition right here, you can plug in whatever condition you want right here. So I'm just going to take lost game, drag it here, get lost game, and then I'm going to plug this in like that. My bad. I'm just going to put it right there. Perfect. So now if this condition is true, that means we're not going to do anything. If it's false, then we're going to do stuff, right? So we're going to take the false and plug it into this. And we're going to hold control on our keyboard and just like drag this away and just click anywhere else just to remove that connection, right? So once the U1 event is called, it's going to check if you've already lost the game or not. If you've not lost the game, then it's going to run all this stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything, right? But the problem right now is that we're not really changing the value of lost game ever, right? Because it's going to start off as no and it's always going to stay no. So what you want to do is that when the uLost function is run, after all this stuff is done, all we need to do at the end is we also need to set the value of uLost set the value of lost game to be true. That's all we need to do. That's literally all there is to it. I hope it made sense. I'm going to explain it once again in just a minute, but I just want to make sure that it works first. So we're going to wait for the you lost. We're going to wait for the you lost widget to be displayed first. Okay, perfect. Now if I go near that, you're going to see that nothing is going to happen. Even though we overlapped with the box, nothing really happened because we have already lost the game, right? I hope it made sense. So basically what we're trying to do is that we're gonna just, once you lose the game, it's gonna set this variable to true, and it's just gonna make sure that this variable is not true before winning the game. I think it's pretty basic logic. I hope it made sense. But yeah, that's that. And let's go ahead with the logic. So the next thing that I want to work on is basically displaying the timer on the screen, because right now if I play the game, you can see that we don't really know how much time we have remaining, and obviously we want to have a timer on the screen just to know how much time we have remaining, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to basically duplicate any of these widgets. It doesn't matter which one. We're just going to duplicate them, and I'm going to be calling them timer underscore widget, right? Or what we can do is we can just call this HUD, HUD, heads up display. So basically, if I just call this HUD widget, the reason why I just called it a heads up display is because we're gonna be adding health and all that stuff later on to this as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna call this time remaining, right? And obviously I'm gonna make it like very small, something like that. Okay, and then what we can do is we can just Control C, Control V, copy it, and this I can just do 0, 0 for now, just for a placeholder value, and I can just increase the size of this. Something like 120 should be good, and just place it right there. Move the time remaining slightly up as well. Perfect. One thing that you want to make sure, I think it's too big actually, maybe 100 should be fine. That's better, I think. One thing you want to make sure to do is basically if you want to place these on the bottom left hand side, for example, make sure to change the anchor to the bottom left as well. Just select the bottom left for both of them individually. Just make sure to do that, otherwise it's not going to be displayed properly. Just move it down slightly. Perfect. So now the thing that we're going to be learning is how exactly do you change these values based on sort of results from something else, right? Because obviously, so far the widgets that we've seen are essentially widgets which have the same exact text or the same exact elements on them. And so those are easy. This one does require some blueprint programming. So we're going to be doing that in just a bit. But yeah, it's pretty simple actually. So what we can do is we can just select the number and then we can go to text. And you're going to see this thing right here, this chain thing right here. If you click that and click create binding, it's going to take you to this blueprint editor thing right here. And you can essentially just do some blueprint programming in this and basically get whatever value you want inside this text. So what we want to do is that we want to basically, if I just go back to my blueprints, and if I go back to my game mode, you're going to see that what we're trying to get is essentially this time remaining thing right here. But for that, in order to get anything from this, what we're going to have to do is, you guessed it, we're going to have to cast it first. Cast to game mode tutorial like this. Object, in the object, just search for get game mode and just plug that in like that. And so as game mode tutorial, what we're going to do is that we're going to get time remaining like this. And from there, what we can do is we can just search for get timer remaining by handle. Now what this does is basically this time remaining thing itself, in and of itself, is not essentially a number. It's just a whole bunch of things. So what this does is that this essentially just takes the whole variable and it just extracts the time remaining from that whole variable, right? And this one, we're going to take the return value from this and we're going to plug it into this like that. And so it's going to create a new node automatically, which is going to convert this integer, which is a number, to a text, which is basically string, right? So that's what we're doing right here. I hope it makes sense. I know it's a little confusing, but I hope it's, not too hard. I'm going to explain this once again. So if you didn't understand it the first time, I hope you do this time. So first things first, we're going to be casting it to the game mode tutorial. From that, we're basically going to be getting the time remaining. And after that, we're going to be getting the actual time remaining from that variable, right? And then we're going to be converting that to text. And we're going to be displaying that text on the screen. I hope it makes sense. What we can do is we can just compile this and see if it works. However, if I play it, you're going to see one problem, that we're not really displaying that widget on our screen. So for that, we can go back to game mode, and when the game starts, so with when begin play, after we set the timer, what we can do is we can also just set create, we can create widget. So just do create widget. Class is going to be HUD widget, and then we can just add to viewport just like that. And now hopefully it should work. Let's see if it works. So you can see that now we can see the time remaining, and it is displaying us the time perfectly fine. There's a whole bunch of significant figures and a whole bunch of decimal points that we don't really want. So how exactly do we fix the decimal point problem? We just go back to the widget, right? And here you're going to see that the this two text node right here has this drop down arrow right here. So if you do that, you can basically change a whole bunch of settings. The one that we're interested in is maximum fractional digits. It's set to 3. So 3 decimal points essentially. I just want to set it to 1. So if I do that, you're going to see that it's basically just going to be 1 decimal place, which is perfectly fine. You can also set it to 0 as well. I think that would look better, honestly. But let's just see, because otherwise I think it's too long. I think that's better, low-key. Yeah, I think that's better. And also one problem that I'm noticing is that the text is just too big. So I'm going to go back to the designer tab right here. In the top right side, you can see that we have the graph and the designer. So we can go to the designer and just, make everything a little smaller. So instead of 30, just make it like 24. And instead of 100, make it like, I don't know, 70 or something like that. Because we just want it to be like, low-key and not like super obnoxious. Something like that should be good. Compile it. And make sure to save all, by the way, because Unreal Engine can and will crash on you. So yeah, I think the time remaining feature works pretty nice. And you can see that the moment we win the game, it should just essentially just become 0 because the timer has been invalidated. So that's also proof that the timer is actually being invalidated. And that works perfectly fine. And if we lose the game, it should also be the same output. So we're displaying the timer on the screen. We are essentially done with most of the logic for the game, like the basic logic for the game. Now I think we should probably move on to some of the more complex stuff, like adding enemies and adding the whole, combat logic and all that stuff. So I was sort of making a course outline for this, and I think level building is done. The basic logic for the timer and you win and all that stuff, that's done. I think we really should move on to the next part, which is going to be enemy logic. The course is about to ramp up from here slightly. It is going to be slightly difficult, especially for the absolute beginners. So just do know that and keep that in mind. I would recommend you to sort of be very comfortable with the things that we've covered so far before moving on with the course. If you haven't, you can watch things over and over again, and that's just going to, cement the basics for you in your head, which is going to help you a lot in the future. But without further ado, let's go ahead and continue the course.